Woodland Brutality 2023, and I was stupid enough to do it twice. The second time around, I decided that I'd put in my modern kit and my modern effort, and therefore I could have a fun run, which was assault irons. And I decided that I was going to LARP, or reenact. The reenactment category was present, so I decided to select that one because let's go through what I was wearing in order to become a 1973 to 75 ARVN GI. So I'm from Vietnam, I'm from the Vietnam War, I'm not an American, I'm not a fancy South Vietnamese ranger. I am the poor son of a bitch that got left behind by the departing Americans in 1973 and still had to fight off the North Vietnamese for 2 more years after that, before Saigon fell. So what was I wearing? Well, starts of course with skivvies and then t-shirts for the base layer. Specifically, first day, I was wearing the OG Woodland Brutality t-shirt from last year with the tick. And then on the last day, I wore the new hotness, which on the front looks the same, but on the back has everyone's most beloved marsupial with a what would Stoner do rifle. Arm the marsupials. On top of that, layer a uniform set in ERDL. This is specifically the green pattern of ERDL, which is what a lot of Southeast Asian countries, especially Vietnam, used for their camo. This is the predecessor to M81 Woodland. It was developed for use in Southeast Asia, and it was very popular amongst the ARVN forces and some of the advisors alongside them. And I specify the green ERDL because that is what the Southeast Asians use. There is also a brown ERDL, ERDL. There is a brown ERDL that was issued commonly to the Berlin Brigade of American troops. You do not find brown ERDL in Southeast Asia. Anyways, these are more Militaria replica Ripstop uniforms. So it's not precisely correct, but it's close enough for my purposes. And it's a lot closer than a lot of people would end up. So, uniforms, the big problem, the one giant drawback of going LARP with this specific set of pants, no knee pads. That sucked. But we suffer for the art. All right, load-bearing rig. So you know how in modern gear I talked about first line, second line, third line, and that whole philosophy of use? Yeah, no, you're a GI. You get no choice in this matter. You have everything in one giant line. There is no other option for you. So what do I have here? I have, in essence, a late warified set, a mixed set of what is effectively Vietnam era gear. This is, at its base, a M56 pistol belt or some variation thereof. The eagle-eyed amongst you might notice that this is not the right buckle. This is actually a surplus Belgian 1956 pistol belt, and the Belgians used a different clip system that I personally prefer, and also this was just what was available for cheap on Varstilleka. And let's be honest, it passes the 5-yard test. Then it has some legit M1956 suspenders on top. So you would have all that hooked up. On the front directly to the belt, and then on the back it is hooked up to a M61, 1961 butt pack. We'll go into what's in there, but that's how the suspenders hook up. It hooks up to the butt pack, it hooks up to the belt. How to go about this? I suppose let's go this direction. And well, first off, talk about first aid compass pouch. This is entirely stuffed for looks. It has no practical bearing. I just stuffed an ace bandage in there. Iron Sights Division does not require you to have a med kit readily available. So I just stuffed an ace bandage in there to give this volume. And actually there were some stages where I took the ace bandage out and stuck it elsewhere in the pack, because that way I could get a better shoulder weld with my rifle. On my left side, I have ye olde headlamp. Not headlamp, ye olde shoulder lamp. It does actually legitimately work. I did not use this as my illumination at night, because that's hilarious. My half lumen 0.5 candela will totally let me see the targets at 120 and 150 yards. Yeah. And then this has been gaffer taped to the suspenders so that it doesn't fly off, because at local matches I was finding that this had a tendency of just bouncing right off of the clip onto the ground, and I didn't want that to happen. There's no functional purpose to this at all. It's just there for looks. It looks cool. Since we're over here, we'll go ahead and talk about how everything fits together. Gotta get everything arranged a little bit. Okay, so on this side, you have a 20 round ammunition pouch. This is supposed to hold 3 20-round M14 magazines. This is the original M56 magazine pouch for M14s. I do not have M14s in here. What I've actually found is that this 20-rounder will not fit 30-round M16 mags, but it will fit 7 high-power magazines. So I have my on-deck magazine and any reloads I want for my pistol all stowed in here. Farb, absolutely, but then again, you also wouldn't find a GI, ARVN, or US with a pistol, unless they were going through the tunnels. That's a whole other story. But that is what I use the 20-rounder for. Is that easy to access? Heck no. But we suffer for our art. Next up, bayonet. It's the M7 M16 bayonet, the classier of the M16 era bayonets, in my opinion. Unlike the AK bayonet, this actually has this little tie-down thing, and I'll be perfectly honest, you need to tie this down, because this came loose on me at a local match, and where I had to go prone a lot, or where I decided to go prone a lot, and man, this thing flops around so much when you go prone. It is really problematic unless you have this strapped to your leg. If you have it strapped to your leg, it stays nicely in place, nicely out of the way. All right, next, 1-quart canteen. Very, very important, because hydrate. Next, M61 butt pack. But isn't this load-bearing gear supposed to be M1956? Yes, yes it is. But I'll be perfectly frank, the historical record shows the 56 dated stuff, all this cotton, rotted real fast in the jungle. So all the 56 components started to just basically rot off of people because guess what? This stuff does not dry out fast. We got rained on Sunday during our last stage of the day. On Monday morning, this all was still wet. I had to put it away in my bag, in my duffel, still wet, and air it out Monday evening at the hotel, at the next hotel. It was still wet. It does not dry off very fast. So it's very easy to understand why all of this cotton rotted so quickly. And when this stuff rotted, they just replaced it with newer stuff. So the M56 butt packs all rotted out from under people and got replaced with the M61s, which also rotted and then got replaced with the M67 set of web gear. Same goes for the canteen pouches, same goes especially for the ammunition pouches. And so you'll see mixed ammunition pouches everywhere. Anyways, we'll go through the contents of this later, but for now, no, 1961 butt pack. This is actually really, really nice. I'll be perfectly honest. In terms of load-bearing gear, you could do a lot worse as an individual soldier in a mass conscription army. You could do a lot worse than this butt pack. The Russians would essentially copy this sort of rig for their Smersh. I mean, copying the Alice, but the butt pack is actually pretty useful. Continuing along, another 1-quart canteen. Still very, very helpful. And having a quart on each hip means, first off, you're carrying 2 quarts, which is really, really important. And also, it balances things out pretty nicely. Next up, the most farby of this entire loadout is this holster. The UM84 holster, otherwise known as the M12 holster. Completely out of date. This is completely wrong. The UM84, as you can imagine, introduced in 1984, but extremely secure. Like, there's no way to rip this open. It is extremely secure. It is still relatively fast to deploy. And at the same time, look how much of the pistol is exposed. Very, very little. You get basically the magazine well. That's it. The entire rest of the pistol, including all of the important operating bits except the magazine well, are completely covered. If I really wanted to, even on a stage that doesn't use pistol, I could ask the RO, hey, can I show you an empty mag and then load it on this empty pistol so that nothing gets in? And then that seals up everything here. The UM84 holster is amazing for brutality matches in particular because it is 100% retention and it protects the pistol. Highly, highly recommended. Plus, it's green, it fits in with the rest of everything. It doesn't look off unless you know what you're looking at. Again, it'll pass the 5-yard sniff test. Should I have a Sam Brown holster or something leather? Technically, yes, but this is good enough in my opinion, and heck of a lot more functional than the leather flap holsters. Last, certainly not least, on this loadout is an M67 small arms pouch, 30 round. And this specifically is where all my rifle ammo went. And can you tell I might have been shooting in some mud and some rain recently? So this holds 3 M16 magazines, 30 rounders, and holds them quite securely. It's not not the fastest to access ever. It's also not the worst to access ever. It's not the slowest. You can retrieve stuff pretty easily, and it stays relatively secure. Now, one of the problems is when you take out the third magazine, the second and first will tend to move around, and oftentimes you'll find them in weird configurations sideways like this. Not ideal, but it can be worked around, and it didn't really slow me down at all. But regardless, that is the M67 pouch. This is not an Alice pouch. It looks a lot like an Alice pouch because it uses the same little catch, and it has the same little Alice style clips on the back. But it is not actually an Alice pouch. This is a straight up surplus M67 pouch. Again, from More Militaria. About half this rig is from More Militaria, about half of it is pieced together from random eBay auctions. But this is a legit M67 small arms pouch. Like I said, the old nylon pouches the old cotton pouches or whatever this material is, rotted real fast and real often. And so very quickly, you see people start using these once they are available. You see them replace their old rotting pouches with these nylon pouches that don't rot because they're artificial fabric. Now, if you get napalmed, this is probably not all that happy on your skin. But, you know, you're kind of not using that much napalm. All right. So the butt pack, what is in here? I essentially was running Trooper in this because guess what? This is all I was carrying with me. This, my rifle, my helmet. And everything is on here. This is one of the reasons why I'm saying, like, this load-bearing gear is actually really well thought out for as old as it is. You could do a lot worse. One of the problems, though, is that this bag, it's not very good at keeping things organized. So in no particular order, just as I pull them out, spare magazine, spare magazine, spare magazine, actually has bullets in it, spare magazine, spare 20-round magazine in case I wanted to be cute with my LARP, another spare mag. So I was carrying, again, 260 rounds of ammunition. I didn't think I was going to need that many, but at the same time, I knew I was going to be shooting iron sights, so probably just want to bring it all to be safe. Bug spray, again, all my uniform was actually permethrined. Sunscreen, still important. Next up, this is small bore, or rifle bore snake, pistol bore snake, and a can of ballistol. Gloves for resetting stages, especially steel. There's the other one. Spare pistol ammunition. The Browning High Power only had 15 rounds per magazine, and I only have 7 magazines. Do the math, that's 105 rounds. I still wanted about 200 rounds of pistol ammo on me, just because. Am I going to need that much in a Brutality? Probably not, but I don't want to leave targets behind because I ran out of ammo. E-tape, Nate. Get a 1911 that doesn't drop the grips. Maglula to go along with the spare pistol ammunition, and that's it. Not the smoothest of stuff ever. Nope, I'm forgetting. All the stuff that was in my admin pouch in the, in fact, I'll be right back. fix-it and zeroing bag, ear pro, rapid rod, paint pen to mark dark things, Sharpie to mark light things, 2 Band-Aids, especially for this loadout. We'll get to why later, or actually you've already seen why. And then the lens pen. I did not actually bring the lens pen with me for the iron-sighted run because, hey, no lenses to keep up. I did, however, bring the rangefinder and the shotgun because you've probably seen it on the videos, but stage 1 had one hell of an iron sight, had one hell of a target. I'm sorry, stage 2, Bay 1, had one hell of a target that was really difficult to see on Friday. So I brought the rangefinder with me so that I could spot that target and so that I could talk my squad mates on the target who had not shot that one before. Now, turns out when we got there on Sunday, it was a very, very starkly different lighting condition. On Friday, it was direct sunlight into the valley, casting the target and its backers into shade. On Sunday, it was even, overcast, dispersed lighting. And in the dispersed lighting, the target on Bay 1 of stage 2 was much, much easier to see than it had been on Friday. It's funny how conditions can change how a stage goes very, very dramatically. And of course, like, that's just luck of the draw. Yeah, it kind of sucked to shoot stage 2, the trench, in the rain. It was also, quite frankly, awesome to shoot that in the rain. You know what would have sucked more in the rain? Stage 6, the long range stage, because the rain was coming down heavy enough in some portions that I'm pretty sure we would not have been able to see the 400-yard targets or the 450-yard target from the 400-yard line. Anyways, this is everything that I had in this pack, which when you look at this, like, it's a lot of volume. Until I actually put together this LARP, I didn't really know what to expect of the butt pack, but it's seriously impressive. Like, to be able to fit everything in here, quite impressive. That is your standard GI, like both US GI and ARVN GI load-bearing equipment, a full set. So let's talk guns. Now, let's talk the pièce de résistance, the M1 helmet. Specifically with the Vietnam era chin strap. This is an M1 helmet, no cover, because the quintessential ARVN outfit you would see is they would have whatever fatigues and whatever flak armor they had, flak jackets, but they would not have a cover on their helmet. When you look at all the photos of the Tet Offensive, what do you see? You see a bunch of ARVN troops running around in flak jackets with bare helmets and M1 carbines. But, you know, I don't have one of those, unfortunately. Now, what is the M1 helmet for those who are not initiated? The M1 helmet is a steel pot and a liner, fiberglass-ish liner that has a suspension system in it. And notably, this suspension system, this little sweatband, is a separate item from the cloth suspension system inside. So you notice that this is clipped onto, or it might be a little difficult to notice, but the sweatband, the leather sweatband, is clipped onto the cloth here. The cloth can be tensioned, the leather can be tensioned, but they are tensioned separately. And then you stick the liner on the inside of the pot. The steel pot itself, this is steel, obviously, I've been saying it's steel. And then this is also where the actual strap is attached. And you can tell that the interior of this was used by its prior owner, or at least some of its prior owners, to carry stuff inside it, or to cook stuff, or to wash stuff. You can see the grease rings. Not grease rings, but you can see the water marks. Fun fact, so you may notice if you get a set that you might not get a perfectly matched liner and helmet. Like in my particular case, the liner is ever so slightly too small. The way you fix this is you take socks that you don't wear anymore and you stick them on the inside of the helmet in such a way that they add a little bit of thickness. Why does this happen? It's because this is meant to be worn with a cover of some kind. In World War II, they would have the camo netting, or the like fishnet covers, or they would have the cloth covers that some of the Brits would wear. In Vietnam, obviously, the Americans all had Mitchell covers, and the South Vietnamese were supposed to use covers of some kind. After Vietnam, they switched over to M81 covers for the M1 helmets, but there's supposed to be an additional layer of cloth. So they intentionally made the liners a little bit smaller. What you can do, however, is not just have one sock in there. You can have a pair of socks in here. And what that does is it keeps a change of socks on you as long as you're wearing your helmet. Now, I didn't have to worry about that. I had spare socks with me, but, and also like I could go back to the hotel room during the intervening day. But nonetheless, there's your M1 helmet for the day. Trivia for the day. Oh, and the last bit is I have this little elastic band here. Technically, it has cat eyes on it, but I've just put the cat eyes on the inside because they weren't using that in Vietnam, to my knowledge at least. I could be corrected. But the M1 helmet sits very nicely. And then the Vietnam era chin straps are actually really cool. They work very, very well. But this does still shift around a bit. And it has gotten in the way of getting a good sight picture before. That does happen. More so with the M1 than with the Mitch and ACH. It's almost as if, 70 years of helmet development can lead to some major improvements. But the suspension system is nice once you have it set for your head, and it takes a little bit of work to get it just right. The suspension system is nice, the liner system is good. If you have long hair, you may want to tape over the little nape guard mounts inside the liner. There is a nape guard that later edition liners can come equipped with, and they mount into these little jagged slider keepers here, which will yank on your hair if you are like me and have super long hair. But that's the M1 helmet, a delightful little piece of history. Now, finally, the pièce de résistance, the guns. For my pistol, I'm shooting a Browning high power, except not really a Browning high power, because it's a Girsan. This is, in fact, a Turkish clone of the high power. This is the Girsan MCP35. This is pretty much a faithful Mark III high power clone, with the exception of it uses a ring hammer. I personally have fiber optic sights on this. That is because the this particular pistol came to me with a ridiculously deep 6 o'clock hold. And as a result, I swapped out the front sight in order to get to something closer, and now I have a cover the dot hold, which is basically, it's not quite what I expect. I typically expect to work with a point of aim, point of impact hold, but it is good enough, and the cover the dot hold that I have with this now is better for me than the artillery trajectory that it was on when it arrived. And the safety, 15 round magazines. I went ahead and took out the magazine disconnect because, let's be frank, magazine disconnects are pretty stupid, and the French La Militaire was dumb for asking that the magazine disconnect be added. And yeah, the high power is a lovely, lovely pistol. If you need a old-timey pistol, you cannot go wrong with a high power. The one thing to watch out for is this is a faithful high power. You will, if you choke up too much, like with a modern grip, you will get hammer bite. It will bite the shit out of you. So, buyer be warned, it is a faithful high power. And finally, an M16. Not an M16A1, not an XM16E1, an M16. This is essentially a late war mutt of a rifle. It's a clone. This is ultimately, this is a Nodak Spud lower, Nodak Spud upper with the color matched charging handle. JSC surplus barrel assembly. So populator barrel came with the front sight and everything already installed. And a Brownell's handguard, Brownell's pistol grip, and a surplus OG A1 stock. So this has the fixed sights of an A1 with the flip aperture. So I could theoretically use the flip aperture for things. But what you will notice in particular is a couple things. First off, A1 birdcage. Very quickly in the war, they switched away from, first off, they switched away from the duckbill to the triangular 3-prong flash hiders, because guess what? Those duckbills were breaking. They decided to strengthen them by making them a little thicker. So you end up with that triangular profile tri-prong. Those triangular 3-prongs still broke quite a lot. So they switched over to the A1. They did that switch around mid-war. And so you will see plenty of mid-war and late-war M16s running around with A1 flash hiders. You'll also see, this is a early to mid-war feature, the slip ring. Actually, that may have persisted throughout most of Vietnam, but you'll notice, those of you who are familiar with A2s, the A2, the modern Delta ring, has a flare to it so that it's easier to pull back. This is the old-fashioned one, which is just a straight side with some ribbing to give you a little bit of grip. It is a pain in the ass to change the handguards on this, but it is accurate. And you'll notice, well, first off, I should also add Type D buttstock, not the Type E. So it has this little free swiveling assembly, along with all the, I need to oil that, along with the sound that brings. There may have been a reason they switched to the Type E buttstock. You'll also notice chrome bolt. Technically, for a late war rifle, I should probably have a phosphate bolt instead, but you know what? Chrome is cool. And also much friendlier to clean. And then the last little bit, the thing you probably noticed. First off, no shell deflector, because A1. And second, where's the forward assist? This is, like I said, an M16. So in other words, this is late war production Air Force spec, wherein the Air Force said, no, said to Colt, keep building us M16s. Colt said, sure, fine. We're happy to continue building you M16s as we tool up and as we build these many, many more M16s for the Army. But you're going to have a forward assist because the Army has insisted on there being a forward assist. So you will get a forward assist. And the Air Force said, we don't want a forward assist. The forward assist is stupid. And Colt said, well, we already changed the extrusion of the uppers to include this little block of metal where the forward assist gets milled out. The forward assist pocket gets milled out and installed. And the Air Force said, I don't care. We don't want a forward assist. And Colt said, we don't have the old tooling anymore. And the Air Force said, fine, give us the blanks, but mill off this section of the blank. So that's exactly what Colt did. This is most associated with the Colt 605s, the dissipators, so-called. But, and so that's what Nodak Spud calls this upper. They call this the 605 upper. But 604s, late war model 604s, which is the Air Force, the Colt internal designation for the Air Force spec M16, late model 604s had this upper as well. The reason 605s had this upper is because they picked out random A1 uppers from, or they picked out random uppers from 604 runs in order to experiment with the 605s. Anyways, that's enough rifle-specific nerdery from me. It's what I ran. And it is a delight to shoot. And I want you to pay special attention to this and this. Because have you ever tried to see your front sight post at night? You can't. So for the night stage, we had to shoot with searchlights or with whatever lights or night vision devices we had on me. Now, obviously, me and my 0.5 lumen shoulder light would not stand a chance of using my own illumination to shoot the night stage. So instead I had to use the truck searchlight. And when we tested with the truck searchlight, I couldn't see my front sight post, and I couldn't see my aperture. All I was seeing was this big old black front sight block and a trench. And man, if that didn't set off some panic in me as I was figuring out how the heck am I gonna get any hits at all. And come to find out, I talked with Les afterwards, well, the next day. I ran into Les and talked to him about, you know, how are you supposed to do this? And somehow I had stumbled on what is actually doctrine for how to, or at least taught for how to use M16 irons at night, which is to say, you can't see the front sight post, but you can see the entire front sight block. And as long as you know where the front sight post is supposed to be within the block, then you understand where your front sight is, right? And you can't see the rear aperture. It all fuzzes out into gray against a gray background. But you can see the trench formed on top of the carry handle. And as long as you know where the aperture is within the trench, so for mine, you can see mine is actually canted quite a bit to one side in order to zero for windage. But as long as you know where your rear aperture is within the trench, then you know where your trench needs to be. So you line up the block and the trench, understanding where the rear sight and the front sight are in reference to those 2 points. And that's how you align your sights at night. And then the other trick is to go Appleseed, cinch up, lock yourself in to your shoulder and your arm. Tension it all up, and you can maintain sight alignment as you're moving around without having to reestablish it. And that's how, beyond all expectations, I somehow managed to still get 7 hits at night with irons compared to the 7 hits I got the previous night with optics. The M16 is a ridiculously capable weapon still. It is still very, very competitive. 2nd place in Irons Division. I'm happy. And that's what I ran. So, thank you for listening to my ramblings on Vietnam-era web gear and Vietnam-era GATs. If you have any additional questions about any of this stuff, by all means ask. I am happy to go more in-depth on stuff. I am now the owner of a nice little assault irons patch. At some point, I'm going to be dumb enough to go manual division. But that point is not now. And probably not at High Desert Brutality, if I'm to be honest. That might come next year at Woodland. But thank you, and have a good night.